Hi everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing the Dutch Masters Longline Overbust corset made by Skeletons in the Closet Corsetry. And Skeletons in the Closet is a one-woman business run by Sandy from the Netherlands. And this review was made possible by my supporters on Patreon. So here's the front, the side, the back, and the other side. Now, because this was a sample made to a model's measurements, the measurements are a little bit moot because if you were to order this corset, it would be made to measure for you. But for those who are curious, the center front of this corset is 15.5 inches. From the apex of the bust down to the top of the lap here at the princess seam is 16.5 inches, and 11 of those inches are from the waist up, 5.5 of those inches are from the waist down. At the side seam here, it is 15.5 inches. And in the center back here, it's a little bit shorter at just short of 14 inches. And for the circumferential measurements, this corset closes at 23.5 inches in the waistline. The bust here, the full bust closes at 34 inches. The high hip here also closes at 34 inches. And the low hip here is 35 inches. And for the silhouette, I would say that the rib cage is ever so slightly rounded, but it is leaning more towards the conical side. It does pull in my lower floating ribs a little bit, but there's still like ample room for me to take a full breath. And going from the ribs to the bust line, it is a fairly smooth transition. There's no real huge demarcation where the ribs end and the bust begins. But the corset was patterned to have the bust slightly taper at the top edge so that the bust line actually curves over and above the top of my breast tissue here. So it holds me in and it makes me feel very secure when I'm wearing it. And moving down to the hips here, you can see that it's quite shelfy, and where the hip shelf actually hits my particular pelvis is almost perfect. That's one of the reasons why I had to snap up this sample as soon as I saw it go on sale, because I saw that it was built for somebody with a relatively low waist, a long torso from the waist up, so I knew that it would cover my girls appropriately, and pretty short from the waist down so that I would be able to sit down comfortably. So where you see this shelf kind of drop off is exactly where my pelvis is. This is my iliac crest. So let's go to the tabletop portion of this review and I can show you the other details of this corset close up. So here is the Dutch Masters Overbust laid flat, and for the materials, I feel that there are three main layers in this. The fashion fabric is this lovely printed canvas with the Dutch Masters painting on it, and you can see how well it was pattern matched at each panel here. So there are like a couple of places where it seems to have like a tiny bit of a repeat, like for instance this yellow flower, because Sandy wanted to match the white flower here and the red ones down here. So there were a couple of compromises made, but on the whole it is extremely well done, and to the untrained eye, if you're not looking at it closely, it looks almost as if this was just painted onto the corset. And I believe it has a strength layer of couture, and looking at the inside here, it has a very lightweight black cotton lining. And here's what the Skeletons of the Closet label looks like. It's really cute. It's super skinny and just sewn onto the inside of the binding of the corset. And I was quite surprised to discover that this is only a 5-panel pattern because it's so curvy and it wraps around the body so nicely. But it is a 5-panel pattern, so you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And panels 1 and 2 here create a lot of curve over the bust. Panels 3 and 4 create most of the curve at the hip here, and panel 5 is more or less vertical. And for the construction, it seems that the fashion fabric and the strength layer were flat lined, and where the panels were assembled, it seems that the seams were probably pressed open because there is a top stitch on both sides of this corset, and it's very, very flat. I don't feel that like there's one side of the seam that's particularly bulkier than the other. And then it's single boned on most seams here, but there are additional bones here in the center front panel. So there's another one supporting the bust over the curve, as well as this one over the center front.
And it's a little bit difficult to see the waist tape because I can't like open it up from the center front here, but you might be able to see the outline of it right there. So it's invisibly stitched between the layers, and it's 3/4 of an inch wide, and it runs through the entire width of the corset. And here's a close-up of the binding, which is actually made from these strips of fuzzy black velvet. So it's really soft and it's nice against the skin. And it's machine stitched on the outside here. And on the underside here, it's a little bit difficult to see because of the black on black. But it is actually hand finished for a nice smooth couture finish. And there was no Modesty panel that came with this corset because it is a sample. However, if you were commissioning a custom corset from Skeletons in the Closet, it would not be unreasonable to request that a Modesty panel be made with your custom corset. However, there might be a fee involved. And again, because this corset was a sample, it had no busk in the front. Instead, it had a single 1/4 inch wide flat steel bone that's 14.5 inches long, running right from the top binding to the bottom binding here. However, if you were to commission a custom corset from Sani, she says that she can easily add a busk in your corset, but there, again, might be an extra fee for that. And this corset is relatively lightly boned. There are 15 bones in this corset, including the one in the center front here. So these are all 1/4 inch wide bones. You can see that they all attract my magnet here. Single boned on the seams here. And I was surprised that it was so lightly boned because it creates such a smooth shape on the body. But that's often the difference between off the rack versus like an independent corsetier, because they know how to deal with turn of cloth or roll pinning a corset. They know how to pattern it to go over the curves of the body very smoothly, and they don't need like a ton of rigidity in it to create a beautiful shape. And here's a close-up of the grommets in the back. So they are 2-part size 0 grommets with a medium flange around them and finished in black. I recognize these as being the 2-part prim eyelets, and they are all holding in really beautifully, especially considering the fact that this sample has been modeled on quite a few different bodies. It is holding in very, very well. And the laces are double satin ribbon, so they are smooth and shiny on both sides. Very, very strong. No stretch to them whatsoever. They are 3/8 of an inch wide. They are very, 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 very long, as they need to be, because it takes quite a bit of expansion for me to either get this over my head and over my shoulders or pull it up from my hips. So even though it seems like the lacing length in here is excessive, it is necessary for a closed front corset, but it glides beautifully through the grommets. It is very flat and smooth in its profile. If I ever wanted to wear this corset under clothing, for instance, although it is very much a show-off type of corset. Although ribbon does tend to be more slippery when you're lacing it up, it holds the knots and the bows very nicely, and so they definitely do their job.
Regarding the price of this corset, because I purchased it as a sample, it was €289, which converts to about $330 US. Unfortunately, Sani has no more of this exact corset, the Dutch Masters corset in the long line overbust cut, but she has a few other cuts of corsets, different samples in her Etsy shop and also on her site, including, I believe, like an underbust or a waspy in this same fabric. Of course, if you'd like to commission Sani for a custom made-to-measure long line overbust corset in the style that you see here, this starts at €500. So this concludes my review of the Dutch Masters long line overbust made by Skeletons in the Closet Corsetry. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something new. If you did, please remember to click that like button down there and to help support this channel. If you have any comments or questions about this corset or Skeletons in the Closet in general, please feel free to leave your questions down below. I'd be happy to get back to you or forward your questions over to Sani. And if you own a corset from Skeletons in the Closet, also feel free to leave your comment down below and let us know what you think of it, because I'm sure many of us would be curious to know your thoughts as well. This corset was funded and voted on by my supporters on Patreon, so it's because of each one of you that my reviews are made possible, so thanks to every last one of you. If you would like to have a say in which types of corsets I review in the future, or even video topics I make in the future, I will put a link to my Patreon page in the description down below and also on the screen here. There are many perks to choose from on my Patreon page, including first dibs when I have my own sample sales, exclusive discounts, and store credit. So once again, thank you all for watching to the end, and I will see you all next week for another video.